The Watcher is a very different kind of slug cat. It doesn't hold your hand in the slightest, even less so than the main game. And I'm going to give you my rundown and my experience in full playthrough of the game through voiceover. The Watcher has you open with a cutscene of Nightcat and other slug puts. The Watcher goes to sleep in this cutscene and wakes up alone. I don't know what that entails. I don't know if that entails that the echo you end up coming across, which you'll see soon, is what led to that, or if it was just a case of he got real slumberous. It's also possible that he never came back, because you do see Nightcat at the end of Gourmand's playthrough with another tan slug cat, so it's possible it's not related, but nonetheless, it's what it comes out to. So it starts off just making a jump, and then there's an echo flash. I feel like that's pretty important, because that is, much like Saint, revolves around the echoes. The whole campaign revolves around it. Specifically, one type of echo. The Watcher has you open just above the industrial complex in a new little side area, kind of hidden off to the corner, which is neat. But there's not a whole lot more that I noticed in this initial area. Now, this initial area acts like a prologue, getting you back into the swing of things, at least in my eyes. But you make your way up just like any other slug cat until you find the echo in Chimney Canopy. Now, what's really interesting here is, I mean, you'll make your way up and you'll notice these weird particle effects, almost rotting. And that's exactly what's happening, because when you make your way up, you'll notice, yeah, it's rotted. There's rot blocking your access to pebbles or even farmer rays, which is very interesting. You also hear this chirp. Now, this chirp is important, because it is, unfortunately, the only clue you get as to where the echo is later on, which I'm not a fan of. Now, I think the community is calling this echo Miku because of the whale. Just dumb. And your only other goal is to find this same echo 2 more times in the same location. Now, the other one's in Shaded Citadel. And it's actually where you would find the normal echo. This time around, after yapping to you for a little bit, it will give you a quote-unquote gift. This gift is pretty important because it allows you to camouflage, or essentially go invisible. Now, initially, this didn't seem that game-changing, but it ends up becoming extremely important and kind of almost impossible in some areas without it. Now, at this point, after the second echo, the rot has spread quite dramatically and even affects some of the fauna, like the berries, which, if eaten, just make you either collapse or only give you half of whatever the amount is. This even affects like popcorn plants later on. The previous subtle effects are in full force as well. I mean, it's quite pretty, if I'm being honest, in a really horrific kind of way. Heading west after your previous encounter, where the echo normally resides in farmer rays, you'll locate Miku for a third time. They sort of just briefly describe the world, I guess. Then they describe the future and where and when cryptically, all before just this is where the Watcher truly begins. And also where a lot of criticisms are going to come from me, especially here at the beginning and kind of towards the end, but I'll get to that in a moment. After that third encounter, the Echo essentially teleports you to just one of the many, many new areas. This one being called Coral Caves, which is probably one of the top ones in my opinion, at least aesthetically. It's not too bad, but I mean, it's really pretty, you know, it's kind of cozy, which is a good beginner area. However, I am going to give my first and probably many complaint, as your goal right now is completely unclear. There's nothing. It's kind of like when I first started rainworld. Only you have no karma and no echo flashes or no watcher eyes, or not watcher eyes, the little yellow eyes and the iterator eyeballs that would show you what to do and where to go. None of that. Nothing. All you can do is explore, and that's initially fine as well. What else would you do? But you keep exploring and exploring, and then you see something new only to realize it's just a weird creature that just blocks you. It doesn't get out of the way, and it shocks you out of the way, and you can't throw spears at it. It's like, what the what are you supposed to do? And then, oh hey, I can eat this creature, and okay, what the fuck, I'm poisoned. And now I'm dead. Eventually, you'll wind up coming across Wibbly Warbly Town, as I like to emphasize, because it is, I don't know what else to call this thing. At first, I thought it was like an echo, but then I got up close, and it opened wide for me. Okay, that sounds bad, but then I got sucked in. That sounds worse! Listen. All in all, this specific portal I stumbled upon brought me to a cold world called Blast Deck. Blast Deck was stupidly short-lived for me, as I ended up almost immediately upon another portal. I only took it because it was kind of my only sign of progress, as I was still under the impression something will catch my eye like an Echo Flash or an Overseer, but nonetheless, it took me to Sunlit Port, and unfortunately, much like Blast Deck, it was so short-lived. It was not even 3 minutes before I stumbled upon another portal. And this is where my main complaint comes in, because this is most of the gameplay. Until you find an echo, and you don't just find them once or twice or 3 times, not even 5, you find it 8 different times before you're done finding echoes. And each time it's find a portal, explore till portal, explore till portal, explore till portal, until you just happen upon one of the locations the echo resides, which I don't know if it's at every one of those locations and you can kind of differentiate, or if it's at all of the different places, or if it's kind of randomized based off of where you've already been, or if it's just the one. It's very uneventful because of how quick and easy it is to do exactly what I've done over and over and over. I didn't find the echo for a long fucking time. You can take a look at the map prior to finding the last portal, which was portal number 9, I think, in a place called Heat Ducks. This is all Miku the Echo had to say. This encounter raised the karma by just 1, and is what told me that the echo is what I had to find, sluggishly and slowly. I was praying I only had to find another 3 or 5 or however many encounters, because at this point I was already 4 some odd hours into the main chunk, and I would find a place, die a bunch of times, run until I hit a portal, rinse, repeat, and then by chance stumbled upon Miku and went, oh, that is the goal. I didn't get anything else, and didn't even know what the extra karma was for, as it took no toll to travel between worlds. It was bizarre, and it kind of put a really bad taste in my mouth. But oddly enough, I kind of fell in love with it towards the middle bit, as weird as it sounds. I kind of like how disjointed it was in retrospect. I just wish I had something, anything, to help me guide it to the random echo that's in a random location. It needs a little bit of work. At the very, very least, an echo flash. I mean, it's the least it could have done. I mean, I could have missed this spot for the 4 hours, and I never would have known. Luckily, when you do find the echo, it kind of gets you on the right track by teleporting you to a location roughly, sort of, kind of adjacent to where the next location is, but even at that, it's pretty bad. This new location it teleported me to is Stormy Coast, and it's my genuine personal favorite because I find it extremely relaxing. In fact, I found it so relaxing that I ended my first session here because I fell the fuck asleep. Now, a lot of this is just my general feeling on it all, and kind of a rough draft of what happened, but the truth of the matter is, even when I did find a new creature, it never really did anything, never helped me, or even endangered me. Hell, I didn't even die to a new creature until I was almost at the end of the DLC. It's really a shame I have nothing to report on them after over 5 hours, and I likely won't have anything to say by the end of it all. It's really quite lackluster when taking into the amount of areas into account, because there are nearly 20 or 30 of these worlds. It's really convoluted by the end. Going into my second session was really just a rinse and repeat of before. I'd wander, find a portal, repeat, maybe a few deaths, maybe a cool location or creature that was too brief to recall, and then randomly in a place called the Badlands, without any real expectation, I went, oh hey, it's the Echo! And they didn't even say anything, which kinda ticked me off, because after all of that, they had nothing to say. Just literally said ... and then poof, you're off to a shrouded coast, which was literally just shoreline but worth. Really nothing of note, except, hey, now you can create portals, sometimes, depending on what's happening, and it uses up your karma flower and just makes it all the more confusing. Woo! I think you kind of get the gist here. I've literally cut over 7 hours of footage for simplicity, because it was just exploring until you find Miku. I mean, that's all it is. Fourth time around, they were actually in the location they sent you, and just off to the side. It didn't even take me long to find them. I really wish I could say that for the rest. Said nothing, gave karma, repeat. I did end up finding this cool place outside of an area called the Outer something. It was called the Throne, which obviously had a lot of significance, and I do believe holds the key or clues or something to... I'm assuming a secret ending, or like a second ending, because every Slick has had one. It 100% has to do with the rot, but it's just getting me sidetracked, and truthfully confused me way more than I would like to admit, because I honestly thought it was something I had to go back to after doing something. So I kept going back here. I went back here 2 or 3 times. It was all a mess. But I'll talk about that later. Salination, I have no idea how to say this word, is the next resting location for Miku, who continued her bullshit ramblings about wizards or something, I don't fucking know, and then boom, that was it. I found this room in Shadow Terrence, which, and I may have forgotten this just before, but when you turn invisible after, I don't know, 3 or 4 karma levels of, progression, essentially, the little slug guy actually floats or kind of hovers for a brief moment while transitioning between states. I thought I could use this to get over this little gap here in this room, and I spent quite a while doing this, even whipping out dev tools to try it over and over with no luck. This is the intended solution. However, it's just something you have to do after you've located all the other Mikus and come back to this last. Keep that in mind, because that's literally the whole point. Miku's next location, however, and my god, that's actually accurate, after 3 hours, was in Signal Spires after riding a fucking whale. Which, funnily, I was only able to get to Signal Spires because in the previous area, I had waited for the rain to come and rode up the flooding waters, which was that world's gimmick, up to the portal spot because I couldn't get up to it, otherwise. And even at that, I only found out where to go in the waterways area by just looking at the map and trying to figure out what the hell was a dead end and what doesn't have a connection when it should. And that kind of worked out here in the mid cases, but it did not hold up in early cases at all. This is more mid to late game, I guess. At least in my playthrough, I have no idea how different other people's went. And truthfully, I feel like I got really lucky a lot of the time, so it flip-flops. Either way, Signal Spires is gorgeous. It is 10 out of 10 in visuals, and it's a really small, compact design. It felt really good, looked absolutely amazing. I loved it. It was that top 3 areas, and I kind of wish a lot of the areas were more similar to this one. Here's what Miku had to say. That's right, nothing. Woo! It took another solid few hours to find Miku in Fetid Glen. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm skipping over so much photos, but I genuinely have nothing to show. It was just teleporting over and over, trying everything I could to get to this specific world, as it was one of the only 2, I think, that I didn't have a connection with. And I thought it was going to be the simplest to get to. So I was stubborn and persisted. Unfortunately, I even used dev tools at one point when I ended up in an area I was trying to get away from, just to fling me to another portal, just to see where the hell I could go and where I needed to get to. It was a mess. It was a mess, and at this point I had given up trying. One of the last, thankfully, locations she rested at was Turbulent Pump, which ironically I had previously explored and gave up on because I couldn't reach a specific underwater area, as I didn't use my bubble weed efficiently, which is probably why it took me so damn long to locate Miku this time around. After all, I had already been here and explored it and gave up on it. It got buried under the other 15 or 20 worlds that I had seen and experienced thus far, and I only decided to go here after looking at the map for like a solid 5 or 10 minutes and realizing it was one of the only ones that still had a dead end where it didn't have anything left to go for. I had explored maybe 70-ish% of every other world at that point and just ran into too many dead ends before I realized this, and I so fucking wish it was sooner because it got really mundane at this point in the playthrough. I mean, it felt like padding on a ridiculous level. I think you have to locate Miku way too many times without any hints. I don't know how they thought you were supposed to find it regardless, but all in all, I mean, this is what it ended up to. After locating Miku in Turbulent Pump, when you go invisible, it finally does something different and brings you to, I believe it's the Shadow Realm. It allows you to skip over literally all dangers except those that reside in the realm, aka these big purple fucks. This also greatly increases the time you can spend invisible and allow you to float up much longer. But as I find out in a minute here, because I died of one of the big purple fucks, it requires maximum karma. Which I think is what ended up getting me this cutscene. I presume because I just slept after unlocking it, or it's because I had died and I wasn't at maximum karma and I was going to maximum karma. But I mean, either way, it's very neat. I seriously wish this was unlocked, like this ability after 4, not almost 8. It dragged on so much here at the end. But finally, with this extra flying wibbly warbly shadow demon mode unlocked, you can just barely get over that gap I mentioned before and make your way through Shattered Terrence and enter the Shadow Realm to meet Miku one technically final time. This is Ancient Urban, and I think it's where the DLC really shines and finally feels like it meant something and explains at least somewhat what you were doing and what was going on. Albeit padded out over mostly modded, disjointed areas, but it is what it is. I mean, it's still really fun and really cool, but it's just confusing. Here you're in the past, and actually after slugging your way through the pipes and air ducts and everything, you get to catch a glimpse of the ancients for the first and probably only time. It's really cool to see them like this and made me really happy that something special was actually happening at all. I love rainworld for the exploration and survival, but this DLC almost felt like Inv when I beat him for all the wrong reasons. It just didn't feel like there was a story I was reaching for every time. When I found Miku, it strictly felt like chance. If there were indicators, a lot of my annoyances I think would be solved. And I think it's a lot of what this DLC needs, but this ending was, I think, worth it, but it definitely leaves more to be desired. But this is the end, and I'll just let it play. You go past the window, up the ducts, into what I believe to be a memorial room of sorts. You wake up on the void seabed here, with only one real direction to go. And this leads you to what I can only describe as Miku's room. I assume when she was still around, as I think she's one of the ancients. And I mean, that's mostly what the echoes are to begin with. At some points in this DLC, I thought it was maybe an iterator, but after this ending, I mean, I think it's pretty cut, clear, and dry that she was a kid or like a young teen maybe. But it's fascinating actually how it kind of ties a little bow around the story of what's there at least, and kind of grim in retrospect, but also still kind of cute. I don't know. It's very interesting, and it's a slightly different take on the echoes and the story as it progresses. It's something different, something more unique, and that concludes The Watcher. I had a lot to say about this DLC, and a lot more to show that unfortunately just isn't worth showing. It's definitely a different take. It's very different feel to Rainworld. And I also understand they plan to expand this even more than what it currently is, so I hope to see it improved upon, as it's still very worthwhile and very interesting, at least to me. The main thing I'd want people to go into this DLC with is understanding it's not like anything before, and takes a very different, often confusing approach to Rainworld and exploration as a whole. And I kind of really love it despite my grievances. It's very different to anything I've played before, and even very different from Rainworld itself. I also know there's 100% more that you can do here. There's something going on with the rot and the whole throne room area that I'm pretty positive leads to another ending, or at least like Easter eggs of some sort. When I'd visited the second time in my playthrough, or the third time, there was even dialogue going on, and there was more areas I could access and more like karma flowers, and I didn't really mess with it very much because I didn't have time to in my first go through, and the second time I visited, I didn't know what to do. With that being said, I enjoyed The Watcher. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it all the same. And I hope to continue to explore it and figure out that rot stuff, because it's more Rainworld. What more can I really say? It's very cool, very interesting, and I like that it's different.
Yeah. Thank you for sticking around to the end and through all my ramblings. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I will see you guys in the future. Or past. Who's to really say?